Hello everyone, my name is Scott Story, and I thought I'd do something different. This is a tour of my most recent sketchbook. I began this in October 11th and ended it a year and 3 days later on October 14th. I'm always doing detailed studies of the human face, working out the ratios, training my eye. Mathematics and the configurations are all there. This was a pen and ink sketch I did at the beginning of a landscape painting course. This is after Frazetta, of course. I am a longtime participant in the Indianapolis figure drawing group, which is a figure study group, as you can imagine. After Frazetta, I sometimes do watercolor there too, or watercolor sketches, I should say. I make it a point when I'm at these group meetup that I put down who the model is, how long the pose is, what mediums I'm using, and often the location, although I forgot to do it on this one. That's from a virtual pose book. Now, this brings me into an interesting subject, because just drawing and redrawing the same thing again and again doesn't necessarily bring these things into long-term memory. The drawing skills that you learn just by drawing are part of the short-term memory and get dumped every day to a certain degree. But if you write things down, then you are accessing the part of your brain that controls long-term memory, and it helps cement these things as part of your permanent drawing palette. Great model. These are drawings that I did at Penske Honda when we were there having work done on Benita's car, and these are just workers and other people waiting for their vehicles. More head studies, working out geometry of the face. Not great, but, more Penske sketches. This is when I was studying the bark drawing method, or barg drawing method, where there is a series of skills that you work out to get a perfect representation of what you see. It's not something that I would do regularly as part of my drawing, but it's good to know. And then here's the Van Dyke Z, a face drawing trick, the Renaissance. This was a study of mixing warm and cool colors. I'm going to have to do this again because, quite frankly, this was confusing. I paint all the time, but this is some stuff that the whole warm and cool concept. This is actual acrylic paints working out a palette with a palette knife, and this is from a earth-based watercolor set. More drawings from Penske Honda. It's worth noting that the stuff in this book is not in chronological order from beginning to end. Originally, I was doing all my work on the right-hand side, as I've always done in my sketchbooks. I'm not sure why I did that, but I did it. And then I started to realize I didn't want to waste all the paper. So I went back and started filling in the left-hand side. This is a drawing of a dragon I did from Medieval Marginalia, where back when the illuminators were filling in pages in medieval books, they often didn't want to leave the margins of the page empty, so they would draw in very imaginative pictures, such as this baby dragon being born, and I painted it in gouache, trying to match the original Benita. This was me trying to learn how to paint in gouache. Pretty rough start. A little bit better. This is drawing with scribbles, letting forms suggest themselves. It's kind of like drawing from a Rorschach ink blot type of thing. This is me working on the different color zones of the human face. People might automatically assume that our skin is uniform, but that's not the case. There are like yellow zones on the forehead and rosy pinker zones and bluer zones, and that kind of forms the painting that goes on top of that. It's subtle, but it's there. Another recreation from medieval marginalia, gouache. Another drawing from scribbling, raising the form sculpturally as I drew. Acrylic gouache overlay tests. This is interesting because I've seen a lot of science documentaries about dinosaurs, and this is where I get a lot of ideas for my fantasy art, is by studying nature, because the level of diversity is just tremendous, like sawtail fish, fish whiskers, teeth designed for grabbing and swallowing whole, the nature of dinosaur armor. More pen and ink study. This is when I started to realize that I was somewhat influenced by the illustrator Franklin Booth, and perhaps a little Frank Cho, who was my introduction to Franklin Booth. This is a study using various pens I've got to work out the best lines for pen and ink work. These are some as yet unrealized drawings that will eventually get made. One from my bestiary, and this is a major character in my series. Here I've done the noton and the color study for a picture that I haven't begun yet. The noton is usually it's pure black and white, but it can be in a limited number of shades of gray and black, where you design and lay out how the shadows will work. You compose the shadows in service of the drawing. Mike Mignola is a master at this. My marauding snail. Some master study of Adam Hughes and how he lays out figures. Master studies are important because it's a great way to use that artist's experience and observation to help your own work. I would never copy anybody, but I'm certainly happy to see how they do what they do. More Adam Hughes. My marauding reptilian. I took a paper marbling class, which was excellent. And this is the booklet that she included. And I put some of the samples that I've done into my sketchbook. I've got a paper marbling kit of my own now, but I haven't really dug into it yet. Trying to figure out the human form in mechanical methods, reducing it to its most functional forms, is something that always interests me. Studying blending with colored pencils for a colored pencil course that I took at this time. And this is the layout of a ceramic dice tower that I made. If you don't know what a dice tower is, you put the dice in here and then it rolls out randomly here, keeping anybody from fudging dice. The original drawing for the dragon ukulele I did, based on no single painting of a medieval dragon, but using lots of different artists to inform their technique. In this particular one, I was really curious to follow all of the energy lines, and it was fascinating because I realized that there was a juncture right here where all the energy sprang from, and right here. There are different energy nodes, I guess you could say. This was when I began taking the colored pencil class. Not great, but I got better. This is reducing a living model to an armature to study the base mechanics of how she was laid out. Here again, the same thing. Discovering rhythms and connections and the kinds of joints, very useful. Live brush and ink in this case. Armature versus the model's actual outline. All these little tricks to train your mind into observing things. Pen and ink drawings done from Sports Illustrated body issue photographs. Not actual true notons, but working out the shadow composition on what would become finished art. The shadows are best arranged vertically. Draw your eye up and down the picture and not halt your eye, and to give 3D form and to help tell the story by leading your eye. There's quite a bit to shadow composition. As I mentioned, Mike Mignola is the master at this. This was the first drawing of the unicorn. It's horrible. I didn't want to do some fey, silly unicorn like they're drawn today. I wanted to go with an accurate medieval version, which was sort of like half a horse and half a goat. Thus the split hooves and the beard and the tail and everything. It was clearly not working out on the first attempts. Here was me working through the anatomy and the mechanics. Here was another attempt, frankly, just as terrible. Eventually I got there and I did a picture I liked. It's not based off this one. These are master studies after Dave Stevens. Before Adam Hughes, Dave was the master at pin-up girl art for a good while. Art Nouveau experimentation. Early attempts at painting with gouache. I had no idea what I was doing, and these are horrible, but that's what a sketchbook is for, is working out the horrible, ugly ideas and stages before you go big. Drawing of Pete Townsend. It was intended to be a study, a gouache study, but it never got that far. Using a sponge to paint. The idea eventually was to paint cloud using sponge. Kind of rough here, but that's what a sketchbook's for. Here's some more monsters from for the medieval bestiary I'm doing. I try to base all of these on real medieval lore, or a composite of the various medieval lore, because all the different sources could vary from each other quite a bit. But I work out the basic anatomy and coloring here, in this case of a Lucrata, in this place of a Catalepus. Eventually, these will be finished art. The Bonacon, who has, well, let's just say deadly projectiles are his power. And there you have it, about a year worth of a sketchbook. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was inspirational, and I hope it helped illustrate how I develop my ideas. Thanks. Bye.